I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. Banks are going bust. We know the air is unfit to breathe and our food is unfit to eat. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller. All we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living room. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the streets. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value. I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!
Good evening, everybody. It's Dave Matthews here, Darkcity Radio, Personal Navigation, and we've got a very special guest tonight, Sarah Lioness, is on with us. Hi, Sarah, how are you?
I'm wonderful, thank you. How are you?
Oh, very good, very good. So, you want to try and be off, I guess, about 9:05. So,
if that's all right, yeah.
Anybody who wants to call into the show can call in on 0161 298 0298. You can also Skype in Bob's Backyard, get into the Skype call. If you do Skype in, can you mute your microphone out? And you can put your hand up in the box by, putting a 1 or a 2 in there. And then we get it back.
Can you hear me?
Did you get any? Yep, go on.
Everybody hear me? Okay. So, yes, the police began to get more and more aggressive as they didn't get what they wanted from us. We didn't kowtow to them. We didn't do as we were ordered, and they got more and more aggressive, started to threaten to arrest us and so on. And my friend had his windscreen, his window down a little bit, and one guy got out his mace and maced Mike, my friend, in the face, inside the car, and then took another shot and maced me in the face as the passenger right across the car.
Nice guy.
Yeah. I ended up having to have a quite nasty operation on my eye because I had such chemical burns that it kept getting infections. I had to have quite a nasty operation in the end to put it right. Immediately tried when I got out of prison, because we got arrested and we got trumped up charges put on both of us. I did 3 days in the cells. For nothing. They then pretended that they'd found cannabis on me and then later decided they hadn't. They then said I had a loaded shotgun, which was a wonderful thing to have when I had a piece of driftwood in the car. And then just as they had to let me out after the 24 hours or 48, however long it was they had, 3 minutes beforehand I was marched up and I was then charged with obstruction. But it turned out that I obstructed someone who wasn't even there.
Wow.
Pretty clever, really, isn't it? Yeah, it's a clever job if you can do that. So I quickly got rid of the charges against me, but Mike's ones stuck. They charged him with 3 different things. He had to go quite often to report back to the police station like a good little boy, you know, and do as you're told, which he wasn't pleased about. And it went to magistrate's court with a lawyer, and he was found guilty on all 3 charges. He fell out with the lawyers and they fell out with him, and nobody would represent him and nobody wanted to represent him, and he didn't want anyone. So he sort of was a bit panicking, and I by this time decided I was going to find out how this awful system works, so I'd started a law course. So me being a first year law student by this time, I said, okay, I'll have a go. I've represented or helped a couple of other people in a few other appeal cases and been successful, so we tried this. And the end of May, that came to court, and I went up and gave them the legal argument and showed what was going to happen. The CPS were completely unprepared for that, and the judge told them off and told them to have 4 weeks to get their act together. Mm-hmm. And when we went back again, they completely gave in. They said, we're not going to oppose any of these appeals at all. And the judge therefore upheld all the appeals. And I don't know if you know how appeals work, but when you have a case, say you've been done for speeding, for example, that's one case, one issue. You can appeal the judgment, you know, if they're guilty. You can appeal that. Or you can appeal the sentence, so that might have been a driving ban or a fine or whatever. Or you can appeal both. And what we did on Mike's 3 cases was I appealed both on 3 cases, so it would have been 6 representations to the court. 1 for the judgment, 1 for the sentence, and then another 1 for judgment, another 1 for sentence, and so on for the 3rd case. So 6 representations to the court, and I didn't have to do it. The CPS refused to engage and defend the appeal, so the appeals were upheld, and all those cases were quashed.
Wow, and if you hadn't have done that, then
he would have kept the guilty.
The usual thing would have been a guilty plea.
£820 fine, victim surcharge. We've yet to find who the victim was, and a 12-month ban.
Yeah, so yeah, brilliant.
But my thinking on this is, if a first-year law student who doesn't really know what she's doing but can wing it, can write a decent legal argument now, if I can get him off on 6 cases at the High Court of Appeal, why the hell did the lawyers allow him to be found guilty in the magistrate's court in the first place? Yeah,
quite. And then what was, so after that, what's been happening?
Well, after that, I've got a case against the police, but we had to wait until this so-called criminal case was finished because the evidence is in that case. So now that case is gone and against me, I got rid of a long time ago. Now the evidence for that case and the witness statements and the police statements and the video and everything that went into that case can now be released back out. And now it goes into my case against them that has been stayed for 6 months, waiting for this to be finished. So now my civil case against them has now become live again, and it should be heard in September. And that's the only remedy is financial. I don't really want that. I didn't know how to do it when I first started prosecuting them. But when that's finished, that does show a judgment against them, and then I'm looking or thinking about taking a private criminal prosecution against them.
Oh wow! And just to go back over it, you know, with you actually making the arguments, can you explain a little bit of how you built your arguments?
Right. Well, a legal argument is simply, if you want to have anything heard, I keep saying to people, if it ain't legal, it ain't getting heard. You know, people do this free man stuff and I'm not the name and all that. The bottom line is, if you can't prove it, if you can't substantiate it with evidence that can be shown to any, any independent, any third party, including obviously it has to be the judge, you have to substantiate every claim you make with evidence. And so do they, if it's challenged. If it's not, they get away with all this thing, and most people don't challenge the state to provide evidence. They just roll over. But we had to give them evidence. So one of the cases against Mike, for example, was that he refused to give a sample once he was in custody. Mm-hmm. He suffers from PTSD. He's an ex-army gentleman, finds the threatening behaviour of the police and the aggression very difficult. It sends him into a headspace where he just cannot really properly function. It was very, very, very evident, because they filmed it inside. It was very evident that he wasn't in a place to be interviewed and messed with for taking samples. And I use that legal argument that in PACE, the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, the custody sergeant is required to have what's known as an appropriate adult with someone who's presenting with mental disorders, psychiatric problems, and they didn't. So we had a very big, a 32-page psychiatric report done on Mike, going back over his history, which we then put in as evidence. So say you have to substantiate a legal argument with evidence. And this independent psychiatrist came to the conclusion that had he been given an appropriate adult, he may well have complied. Mm-hmm. So my argument there is he didn't comply because the police broke the rules. So you can't find him guilty for their failure. So we said that they must drop that case because it's not in the public interest to do so, because it's not his fault. It wasn't his failure. And that's how a legal argument goes. If you've got anything, if you can show that they breached the Human Rights Act and you can prove how, you say, he's not guilty because they should have done so-and-so, or they shouldn't have done so-and-so, and by doing that, it breached my Human Rights Act. And here's a little quote from the Human Rights Act, this section, or this article that they breached. Therefore, he's not guilty. Yeah. You just use their own laws, their own evidence back at them.
Yeah, so you give them the argument in effect, but then you back it up with your evidence.
You must. Yeah. Because it means nothing. If you've got nothing to substantiate it, you could stand up and say, I'm Jesus Christ, but unless you can prove it, it means nothing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm not saying I'm Jesus Christ, by the way.
No, and then with regards to the stuff where you've served notices withdrawing consent, how has that sort of gone? Is that still happening?
I haven't done that. That's not really my thing. I challenge rather than do that, because again, when I started my law degree, at my very first tutorial, I said to my tutor, who was a barrister, 25 years experienced barrister, I said about this consent thing, and that we've said, we don't consent, and they take no notice. And she said something to me which I now see as the holy grail. She said to me, before you tell someone you don't consent, you have to establish that consent is required. Yeah. Oh, that's pretty good, isn't it? There's no point saying it if it's not required. Who cares if you don't consent if consent's not required? Yeah. So that's a part of the legal argument. If they're saying about, if consent is required, you must prove it. And that's where the lioness law thing comes in, because I have evidence and have proven that in the UK we are policed by consent. Yeah. I can't prove that we're governed by consent. I've found no evidence. We clearly are, but I can't substantiate that, so I can't make a legal argument about it. But I can that we're policed by consent. So that
and
evidence.
The police are the informants in any case, aren't they? So they, if you like, without the police reporting on you, then you don't get the government bodies and the magistrates court coming at you with a.
Yeah, absolutely. If nobody follows orders, then orders mean nothing, do they?
No. So, exactly. and what have you done in regards to that? Have you done anything, or do you deal with that at the point where something comes up, or what?
Well, yes, I created this lioness law concept, which sends out this legal argument. It's a 16-page legal argument with evidence to prove that we are policed by consent, and that has gone out to pretty much every constabulary in the UK now, to the chief constable. And people who want the protection of that can put their name on it, and I add them as a claimant with the other side as the defendant, and that goes off to the chief constable. And basically that proves beyond a shadow of a doubt, and will be used in court should it need to be, that we are police by consent, and therefore they know that we know that they're police by consent.
Yeah, and there's video evidence of that as well.
Yeah, there's lots of stuff. And at that point, then we go in and say, so, Mr. X and Mrs. Y and Fred Bloggs don't consent. So you know that they know we're police by consent and that they don't consent. So at that point, if you, police, step over the line and police them, and I'm not talking about things where there's harm, I'm talking about statute. If you police these people who you know are police by consent and they know you have stepped across a line in the sand, and we will then come in and prosecute you because you don't have that authority, and you don't, and we know you don't, and we know you don't, and that argument. So that's where it's gone. And it's never been to court to my knowledge, these cases. I've had hundreds now of people come back and give me feedback where they say that they take their notice, they still stop us. I give people a card that's got the Lioness Laws thing on so that the police know that this is someone who, knows that they mustn't step over the line. And they show it, and the police will throw it away, they'll tear it up, they'll take their notice, they'll still book them, they'll still arrest them.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is that I then get sometime down the line and more feedback from these people saying, it's been 3 months and I haven't heard anything. So I went to my local police station worried because I thought maybe there was an arrest warrant out for me because I hadn't filled in a form or complied with something I should have done, followed up because I haven't heard from them. So I've gone to find out what's happened, and they've given them the case number and they've given them the police numbers and they've told them the dates, and they type it into the PNC system, and pretty much the quote always comes back, it never happened. It never happened. It just disappears.
That's very, very interesting.
They pulled me. They pulled me over.
Yep.
Driving. I hadn't done anything wrong. They just pulled me over. In fact, I pulled over because they thought they wanted to get past because they had the lights and the noises. And they pulled up behind me and they got out, and I've got a Lioness Law sticker on the bumper of my car. And two of them came out and looked at that, and then they got on their radio and they went back and they got out a little book and they made a few notes and they talked on the radio again, and then they got back in the car and drove off. Didn't speak to me at all.
Wow. So for the most part, the story is that they still do the thing where they'll pull you over, they'll go through the motions, and you provide the card.
Push the luck.
So they do what they can, and they bang their chest, and the usual
yes.
monkey thing. But then as a result of the whatever they do when they get back to the police station, it's 9 times out of 10 doesn't go any further. 10 times out of 10. 10 times out of 10. I've never had one yet that I've heard that they are pursuing. So I can't say that they haven't, but I've never ever heard of one. Yeah. So how can people, and the thing which always springs to mind with stuff like this is that people, if something doesn't work, people are always really, really proud to announce or let you know that it doesn't work because they try you've done something, and they can't wait to let you know that you're wrong or that, so I would have thought that you would have certainly heard if it hadn't worked.
It's been going for, I don't know how, but at least a year, and I haven't had any follow-ups yet. I mean, to the sense that they do still pursue, they do still arrest, they still do, shove people around and handcuff them and take them into custody and all the rest of it, sometimes.
Yeah.
But yes, when it comes to any follow-up, it clearly is, it never happened. It's not on the system. It's nowhere to be found. It never happened.
And how can people, if people want to get involved and get one of these cars, how do people go about that? Well,
you can read more about that on my website. That's thelioness.co.uk.
And then get involved that way. So yeah, that sounds like a very interesting sort of. And Lee was just saying in the chat box, that's why you have to remove presumptions, because we talk about presumptions of law quite a lot on here, and a lot of the cases are built on presumptions, aren't they?
Yes, and a lot of cases are built on the presumption, I think, that you're not going to question it.
Oh yeah, and I was talking to a guy, a poor soul today actually, who'd been into the job centre to get his sign on his weekly or 2 weekly thing, and he'd only applied for 17 jobs in a week, which they classed as not good enough. And I mean,
17.
he's there because he's, like down on his luck, and he's paid into the system all his life. So he questioned the woman and sort of said, are you on some sort of a target? And I know this sounds off subject, but I'm leading on to something. Mm-hmm. Then they sort of, they got really, doing the usual thing. You're acting in a threatening manner. You're being aggressive. They called the police on him, so he was ejected. Then he was arrested by the police, and he just said, what am I being arrested for? I haven't done anything wrong. All I did is ask this woman a question. Mm-hmm. So he kept pushing it. He knew a little bit of what his rights were, and he kept saying, look, can you just explain to me what I've been arrested for? Because at the moment you haven't told me what I'm why I've been arrested. So they then turned around and de-arrested him.
Yes.
And the following day...
They promised to do that to me.
The following day, he turned up at the job centre with a megaphone. And he was sort of, because they just basically told him he couldn't have anything, go to a food bank, which is like another sort of a thing that they're trying to bring in, which is very, very scary. There's no crisis loans. Just go to a food bank and get some tins. Yeah. But this poor guy was just outside with a megaphone, and he was doing it in a sort of a kind of a tongue-in-cheek way, and he wasn't being aggressive, and people were supporting him. One guy stopped and, gave him an umbrella because it was raining, and they were all quite supportive of him. And the next thing, the police came, they arrested him, and they said that he was causing stress and harm to one of the employees in the job centre. They wouldn't elaborate on that, but the heartening part of the story is that the sergeant actually was an older guy, turned around and gave him 15 quid out of his own pocket, and said, like, we're sorry to hear that you're down on your luck and stuff, and gave him money. But they still served him with a Section 5, and the first thing that sort of sprung to my mind, number one, is I said to him, if you're going to go to court and you're going to challenge it properly and such like, go to a court and sit in as many court cases as you can, because nobody ever asks any questions whatsoever. They just stand there, they give their name and their date of birth, they have a little conflab, and they say, well, we're going to do this, and this here. Is that okay? And they just go, yeah, and they leave with their, their fine or whatever. And it is, I mean, it's practically comical to see it,
It's sad, isn't it? It's like a production line. They go in and get stamped and next. It's awful. And they just to say, what authority have you got? Where is this authority? Where is this authority to govern me?
Yeah.
I mean, if they have authority, there must be evidence and they can provide it. It's a perfectly valid thing to do in court. You ask for evidence. If you don't ask for evidence, if they challenge you and they arrest you and you're charged with something, if you don't question it, that's going to stand. If you don't defend it, that's going to stand. But if you do defend it and you require them to provide evidence, if there isn't any, then that case has to be struck out because it's invalid.
Yeah, I mean, and I did urge you, to ask, like, what facts and evidence have you got to support the claim that I was causing harm to this individual? Exactly. Because he's entitled to receive, notes from the police notebook. He's entitled to receive his custody records. He was entitled to receive the video footage of him being in custody. He's entitled to any radio traffic in relation to it. There's a lot of evidence that they have to, they have to provide. If they're bringing forth a claim, then back it up.
But did he ask for that?
Yeah, he's asked for that, and I think he's speaking to the Crown again on Monday. But I said to him, he's better off writing to the Crown if he wants disclosure. Yeah, write to them. Don't just speak to them.
Because that becomes evidence as well. You use that evidence. You required it. The one thing I do say to people that I've learned, which I think is very important and very useful, is the police, it appears, are not required to disclose evidence to a litigant in person. They're not required. So if you've been caught for speeding, for example, and you want to see the photographs and you want to see the calibration test of the camera, for example, which you would want because you want them to prove their case, they're not obliged to give it to you. And the court acknowledges that. They just let them walk all over you. So something I say to people to do now is to do what's called a disclosure order. And you'll find it under the Civil Procedures Rules online. Just Google CPR disclosure orders.
Uh-huh.
And what you do is you effectively fill in a very simple form, which you make the order. So you say, I order the other party, whoever they may be, to disclose whatever it is you want them to disclose, documentation, letters, evidence, proof, whatever.
Yeah.
And the reason you want disclosure, and this is a little phrase that I say to people, I don't give legal advice, but this is just friendly advice, is because it says, why do we want this disclosure order? Why are you insisting the court make them? Because it's an order, so the court will make them disclose to you. And the reason you do that, and you put it in the little box, because until I've seen the evidence to this case, I don't know whether I need legal advice. Now, it doesn't mean you don't have to take legal advice, but if you say the reason I want the court to order them to disclose to me this evidence is because until I've seen it, I don't know whether I need to get legal advice, no judge in the land is going to deny that order, because no judge in the land will dare deny you access to legal advice.
Okay.
So they must do it. It's a way of, twisting their hand, forcing their arm. So do a disclosure order, make the court give the order to the other party that they must disclose, because there is no obligation to disclose otherwise. So you force the court to do it. And you force it because you're pretty much blackmailing the judge with the little phrase, I need to see this evidence because without it, I don't know whether I need to seek legal advice.
Right. Okay.
And what judge is going to deny you legal advice?
Yeah, well, yeah. It's more than they dare do, I guess.
Yeah. So I always say to people, think about it,
And another subject that gets touched on quite a lot, and I know quite a lot of people are quite passionate about it, is have you come up with any decent legal arguments to council tax? I once offered to pay my local council in apples, as I no longer dealt in money.
Yeah, but don't tell me they declined. Yes. No, I've not been looking at that, but I have got an ongoing case at the moment which is working again. It sounds really arrogant, but I don't want to play a game that I don't think I can win.
No. I mean, that's what we're here for. I mean,
Yeah. Well, I created a legal argument. I get what used to be called income support, and now it's called ESA or something. Uh-huh. On the basis that it's a long-term illness. So I get that. And then I kept getting this council tax thing, top up. We require £22 a week, I think it was, off you for top up on council tax. This new law thing. And I ignored it, and I ignored it, as you do. And then I got this threatening one. If you don't pay, you've given up your right because you haven't paid to pay weekly. You now got to give us £218 or something within 7 days, or we will take you to court and there will be cost implications. And I thought, okay, you pushed my button. That's enough. That's enough. That's all I need. You're now threatening me. So you bring it to my doorstep. I'm going to bring it to yours. So I wrote out this 1-page legal argument. I've been thinking about it for a long time. I knew what I was going to do already. And the legal argument says, when I get my benefits, I get a letter and it states, the government says you need X amount of money to live on. Let's say, for example, £100.
I can see where you're going with this already.
And therefore I get that X amount of money. So if the council then comes to me and says, you have to give me some of that, without providing me any more service or any more product, they are making it that I don't have enough money to live. So if I can't live, what is the alternative? I die.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's the legal argument, and therefore I substantiate that. I back it up and make it a legal argument rather than a statement and a complaint. I've shown that it breaches, and if off the top of my head, I think it's Article 14 of the Human Rights Act. So I said, this, not only are you making it that I cannot live, I have this, this legislation says that you must not breach my human rights, and you have breached my human rights by doing these actions. So you must desist. And if you don't desist and you continue to threaten me, not only is that intentional infliction of emotional distress, which is the tort, that's a civil issue, but I will not hesitate to take you to court because you're breaching my human rights. You're threatening to not have me enough money to live on.
As soon as you started speaking, I knew where you were going with it, but I'd never have thought of it. I must.
Well, if you think about it, that's exactly the same legal argument as with the bedroom tax.
Yeah.
If people are on benefits and they're demanding money for nothing, that's breaching Article 14 of their human rights. If anybody's a friend of me on Facebook, I've put that legal argument up there for anyone that wants to cut and paste it on my notes page on my Facebook, and I'm Sarah Lioness, so if anybody wants to friend me and have access to that, they're more than welcome.
Okay, that is an absolute brilliant argument. Yeah, I mean, I actually got banned from, I'm not allowed to contact the local council by telephone, by letter, or by email. So I am not able to pay council tax. Because I'm not allowed to do any of those things. They just gave up on me. I asked them for their equitable, claim to the property and stuff like that. But I wrote that. Pardon?
You're asking for evidence, and funnily enough, there never is any. Yeah.
And that's what I said. You know, I went nearly a year writing back and forth, and it was a little bit sort of tongue in cheek, but with a lot of serious stuff in there. You know, and like I say, the thing that had the most effect is you know, where's your equitable claim to the property? Where's your equitable claim to the land? Yeah. You know, prove it up, prove your claim. But we're getting a lot of cases come through, you know, where the liability orders are stamped, you know, signed and okayed like 3 or 4 days prior to the court case. So
yeah, well, I said they threatened me with 7 days. I emailed this legal argument to them. At corporate debt email, the email address is corporate.debt@the council. And I thought, well, it's neither corporate nor debt really, and that's what shows a lot really, doesn't it, that that's their department. And I sent off this legal argument, and they had at the time given me 7 days. They threatened me 7 days I would be in court. And that was on the Friday. On the Monday I got a call from their legal department, from a lawyer, very, very nervous, saying, what do you want, what do you want us to do about it? What do you want us to do? And I said, well, I want you to do what it says in the legal argument, put your claim to zero. I also quoted in it the section, I think it is 13A of the Local Government Finance Act, which allows local governments and councils to reduce their claim of council tax to and including zero should they choose to. So I said, you have got the ability to do it, so, you know, you breached my human rights. I'll have you if you don't. This is your get out clause. Do it. So this is what I said to the guy, and he said, oh, I don't want to fall out on you. I don't want to fall out with you on about this. I said, you don't need to. Just do as you're told. Follow the law, you know, follow the law. And he said, oh, well, we can't just do that. Legislation says that we have to send out, you know, we're not making enough money. We need these top ups. I said, well, your financial incompetence is not really my problem. Exactly. You're breaching my Human Rights Act. So, he said, well, we'll have to send you a hardship form. You have to fill in this form and show that you can't pay. And what it is, it's their get out clause. That's the thing that allows them to tick their box on the system as to why they're not going to be billing me anymore. So I shall fill in their hardship form by writing on it, I'm not complying with the hardship. I'm not going to beg you to say I can't afford to pay you. I've already told you you have no right to do this. But here's your form, stick it in your system and tick the box, or I'll see you in court. And I said, oh, is this court still going on? And he said, oh, no, we stopped that. We're not, the court thing, that's gone. We've forgotten that. They stopped that. So I've got the form out there, but I haven't filled it in.
So you had because I've said before on the show how I filled out a financial hardship form. They sent me a financial hardship form. So on each individual page, I wrote horse shit, bullshit, pointless horse shit, fuck off, all sorts of stuff like that, and just sent it straight back to them. But I don't recommend that people do that. And I know Paul, who you know puts a lot of hard work into the show. We went up and helped a few people up in Ashton-under-Lyne Court. It must be about 6 weeks ago now. And what I do recommend, Sarah, is if you ever attend Ashton-under-Lyne Court, don't sit next to Paul because he'll get you thrown out. It was very a fun day. But actually, on a serious note, when this guy started asking questions, including legislation in his questions, the lawyer for the council got very, very, very twitchy indeed. You know, and he was asking the magistrates, you know, were they on the council, or, you know, in case there was a conflict of interest, and they refused to answer, and it all got very, very heated.
Disclosure order.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, I suppose. So how you would tackle that then is actually file a disclosure order with the court.
Yeah, make the court insist and order the other parties to disclose your evidence, because without it, magic line, you don't know whether you need to seek legal advice.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So always use that argument in effect. Then the seeking.
Always put that phrase in. Yes. I mean, you want to say you want it because you think that you're not getting justice, or that you think that there's, you want to know. You put the reasons why you want to know this. You want to find out if they're a party to the case, but you need to have that evidence before in order to decide whether you need to seek legal advice.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing the judge cannot deny you. He cannot deny you access to legal advice.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So they must do it.
Okay. Oh, well, I mean, the argument is absolutely superb. And I'm sure that there's probably people right now with pens going 90 to the dozen writing.
Oh, yes.
It's pure comedy.
You see the lights come on in people's eyes when I say that.
Yeah. I mean, and it is, like I say to people, if they're going to be playing around with the system, you've got to try and have fun with it as well, and not take it too seriously, because it is quite good fun, especially when you start asking questions like that. But we got the guys on here that all of the crew, week in, week out, come on here and sort of support me, because I'm quite new to it, but new to the radio stuff, and there's a lot of people putting a lot of hours in. I know Guy Taylor and a few of the other people, and they're absolutely inundated. So I can't thank you enough for coming on. I don't know if do you want me to see if anybody's got any questions or anything at the moment?
Yeah, sure, whatever's best for you.
So if Lee, do you want to speak at all?
Yes, just I'd like to say hi. Yeah,
hello, Lee.
How you doing? Yeah, funny enough, I've followed your story as such, what you've been up to and how it got to be from way back. When you
2 years ago now.
Yeah.
2 years ago, June.
Yeah, no. Yeah, all good stuff, and that's why I said to Dave, since you just had that recent success, I said to Dave, I'll get you on to have a chat about your methods and that, because it just makes sense. It's all in the paperwork.
Yeah,
it is. Face your arguments, make them have to answer you.
Standing up and talking about it, you've sort of put yourself on the back foot. If you craft a legal argument, and a good one, substantiate it with evidence, put it into the court, send it to the other party, they know if it's a good enough legal argument and you're confident that you can win. And I wouldn't bother to do it if I wasn't.
Yeah, it's that.
If you're confident you can win, what's the point of them going to court? So if they do still progress it in court and then you do win, there are cost implications. They get your costs. You can put in costs. You, as a litigant in person, and as I sort of acted as litigant in person for my friend Mike, I put my costs, I billed him. I mean, it doesn't really matter, but I billed him, and now he's gone and put my costs in, and statutory regulation somewhere, and I forget where the legislation is. You can Google it. You can legally apply for £18 an hour for everything you've done. So I put in 120 hours of research and the paperwork and the postage and the travel to and from various courts. And I put that in. It's a £620 bill, I think it came up to in the end. And they can't say I can't have it. How could they say I'm not worth it? I just won 6 cases.
Just to butt in as well. Sorry to butt in there, Lee. You can come straight back on again. How did you did you actually represent him? And did you do that because did you get to be able to do that because you are doing the law degree, or how did that come about?
I hate it when this question comes up. No, we played dirty.
Oh, that sounds good to me.
I'm just going to be honest here. Because Mike suffers from PTSD, he finds authority or alleged authority very difficult. So in court, he is not really going to be in a good enough position to stand up and present his case. He can't, he goes slightly deaf. He can't really hear things. He starts being a bit incoherent, and, it would have taken a month and a half for him to get out what he needed to say. Yeah. So the judge obviously talks to him, and I'll sit next to him. I wrote the legal argument, so they know what's coming. But Mike is not able to present his case. So it becomes quite clear very soon that the judge isn't getting anywhere with him. So he looks at me and says, can you help clarify? Oh, funnily enough, I can. And from that point, I stand up and then I'm representing properly. And then they talk to me as if in exactly the same way. And I maintain the case in exactly the same way as the barrister for the CPS. So
Okay.
yeah, once they've asked me, then I'm up. And we sort of have to make it impossible for them not to ask me, if you see what I mean.
No problem.
Yes.
I'll hand you back over to Lee. Sorry to interrupt there, Lee.
No, it's okay. It's all right. Yeah, that's another thing when you're saying about you was billing them. That's another thing I always recommend. I always say to people, just go to a run-of-the-mill solicitor's law office and ask for their fee schedule and just mimic that, because they can't argue that it's a fair fee schedule.
Yeah, they do argue you're statutorily allowed £18 an hour.
Yeah.
They can't argue that. You do have that right. There is a statute somewhere that says it. If you just Google litigant in person costs, something like that, you'll find it.
Excellent.
But yeah, it's £18 an hour.
Wow.
Somebody's asking a question about common law.
Yep. Do you wanna ask a question there, Carrie Ann? It's on in the chat box. Hang on.
Yeah.
I'll read it back from the chat box now. So, 1 second. Yeah, they say that, yeah, quite right. When you talk about common law, you get shafted. That's quite true.
Yes.
I don't get the precedent bit. I thought common law is dominant over commercial stroke state law.
Well,
and it says statute law, sorry.
I think this is a misconception in practice. I wouldn't say in paperwork or in evidence, but I think in practice, and from what I was taught in my law degree and what my law books say and one of my tutorials went into, don't forget we're learning statute, we're learning to be a lawyer or a barrister, so we're learning the system, is common law is judge-made law. When free men, for example, go up and say, we want a common law court, and they're surprised that things continue as normal, they shouldn't be, because we have common law courts. All courts are common law courts. I might put in brackets, possibly not magistrates' courts, but all courts of any record are common law courts, because common law, these free men ideas, they're misconstruing the name. What they mean is their own sort of natural justice when they say common law. That if you've not harmed anybody, it doesn't apply. They use that term to mean common law. But common law in the legal system is judge-made law. It's precedent. So if a case has come before a judge and the judge has decided that this is the outcome, if a similar case with similar evidence and similar situations occur, there is a precedent. So the judge will apply that precedent to the judgment. That is common law. That is common law.
Would that be the same as case law then?
Yes.
They would use case law. So.
Yes. And common law and case law and precedent, they're all bundled up in the same thing, but that is what is known as common law. And that is applied in all courts in the UK and most countries. So when people bang on about, I want common law, well, love, you're getting it. You just don't know what you're asking for. You're getting it. So, don't complain that you think you're not getting it, because you are getting it. But, precedent applies to all lower cases, all lower courts. So if you've got precedent, if you've got a case that's been judged in the High Courts, any court below the High Court, any court lower than the High Court is bound by that precedent, and that is the common law of those courts that are below that. Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
Yes.
If a judge has ruled in a case and it becomes precedent, that is called common law. Then that precedent and that common law ruling is applied to any similar cases that come up in that type of court or any lower court there on down. It doesn't apply to a higher court than that. You have to go up and make a new precedent should you need to.
Yeah. So,
but it's binding on all lower courts.
I think people are sort of referring to a lot of the victimless crimes then, if you like, the statute crimes which are dealt with at magistrate court level.
Exactly. We know what they mean, but they say they ask for common law.
Yeah.
And they don't know what they're talking about, to be blunt, because what they're getting is common law.
Mm-hmm.
So, they're asking for the wrong thing.
Yeah, I mean, sort of. Yeah, when I go into magistrates' court, I'm more concerned with capacity and what capacity they are claiming I am there in, and if they're saying that I was using my driving license, I want them to prove that at the time of the complaint I was using my driving license, and things like this. And I do have success with that, but that is because again of the art of asking questions. But standing there and saying I want common law jurisdiction, I don't really. That doesn't make any sense to me to do that. That's the wrong.
I think that was answering the question.
You may as well bend over.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if anybody else. Carrie Ann, I know you had problems with your microphone just then. So do you want to unmute and ask Sarah a question?
Can you hear me okay?
Slightly.
Go on,
not
speak a
very
bit
loud.
louder. You're very quiet.
Okay. How's that?
Oh,
Yeah,
hello.
that's it. Spot on. Go on, fire away.
Right. Oh, first of all, thank you very much for having me in the room.
No props.
And thanks very much for including me in the debate, because basically that's what I think it is. It's a debate. And I'm very interested in this subject. And with all due respect to Sarah, I've done a partial law degree, although I didn't finish the course. But I did it in Swansea Law School before Swansea Law School was closed. Basically, they merged it with the university. But within my course, within the first year, which is basically learning basic law, I didn't see any evidence that they were very interested in common law, basically. When you say that, when you talk about the precedent, etc., one wouldn't have to go into court as a common man on the land, so to speak, and free under God, to have to state your rights in the court. But as Dave has said, and which I've heard his videos, I've been through all his videos, and especially the one with court, the judge was not very happy with him stating his common law rights and was most upset.
I didn't mention in the just to butt in. I didn't mention common law. The only thing I asked were my inherent rights remain intact if I stood where she wanted me to stand. Just to clarify what I'd said. And she did come unglued straight away and start getting very excited.
Exactly, that's my whole point. She came unglued. That's my point. If it was acknowledged that you were lawfully appealing your rights or dealing with your rights as a common law citizen, then
can you just tell me what is a common law citizen, and where is there any evidence that a common law citizen exists in the legal system where you are standing in that court?
That's the point.
So that takes me back to what my barrister said. Before you complain that you don't consent, you must establish that consent is required. So before you go in saying you're not getting your common law citizens' rights, if that was your phrase, you must establish that they exist. Did you do that?
Well, they do exist. They're inherent.
Well,
why don't they exist?
You
don't have to explain that you don't have to claim them. They're inherent. They're inherent when you're born.
Well, yeah, I agree with you in theory, but we're talking about a legal argument to win in court. And how can you progress that argument when you have nothing to substantiate it, only your opinion? Because your opinion is as valid as, I mean, I'm looking at this forensically. I don't mean you particularly, but one opinion in court is as valid or as invalid as anybody else's opinion in court. So the CPS's opinion may be that you don't have those rights, and your opinion maybe obviously is that you do have those rights.
That's their presumption, isn't it? They're always presuming that you belong to the state, that you've got a birth certificate, that your parents registered you, and therefore, as the United Kingdom is a commercial state, they presume that you belong to them as a commercial entity.
I'd sort of have a little issue with that, because you are presuming that they presume that. I think perhaps a more useful way of looking at that, your argument, is that you would go in and you would, again perhaps to the disclosure order, you would go in and you would make them disclose the evidence that they have the authority over you.
Yes, but the point is, with all due respect, Sarah, and I love talking to you, if, for example, my inherent right to be a free person when I'm born and not a slave,
sure about that?
Well, of course. Until my parents went and got me a birth certificate, I was a free person when I was born. But are you telling me that I was born a slave?
I don't like to think of that, but all the evidence proves that we are treated as such. So I think it's important.
So you're telling me that the state's presuming, as soon as I'm born, I'm their commodity.
I'm not telling you anything. I'm just saying the actions, the way they work towards us, the way they treat us, seems to point towards the fact that they considered us to be their property. And that's how they, like you were saying earlier, people go in and they're railroaded. You've done this, you're going to get this fine, naughty boy, go away and give us your money. And until it's challenged appropriately, well, we can go in and we will say, we want this evidence to show you have any authority over me whatsoever with your statutes. They continue to use them against us. So we have to be proactive, and we have to prove that we are not their property, and I never found any way to do that, or we appropriately challenge them to force them to prove that we are. And of course no one's ever going to do that, because that would be proof of slavery, wouldn't it? If they can provide evidence that they own you effectively. So they can't own you, and we know they don't, but they, like you use the word presumption, they presume that they do because they've been doing it all this time. So we have to be clever, and we have to force them to prove it. And if they can't, there's no case, so the case must be struck out.
Okay,
just to add to that, though, Sarah, the background on this particular case, because we played the recording of the court thing just for a bit of funsies last week on the show. I'd actually pled guilty to the facts. The first time they dragged me in there, I said I wouldn't be producing my documents on the side of the road. As far as I was concerned, if he had a problem, he'd have taken the car off me. Went to court. There was a big fuss, and I said, I'm here in the capacity of a private individual. What are you claiming I'm here in the capacity of? Blah, blah, blah. And they kept on and on and on. And I said, I'm guilty of the facts. I didn't produce my documents. I'm not going to produce my documents. End of story. And then they went, well, we're going to have a trial. And I said, well, I don't care what you're going to have. And I don't consent. There's no need for a trial. We don't need a trial to establish whether or not I produce my documents. I'm only here because I didn't produce them. And I'm saying to you, I didn't produce them. That was the sort of silliness of the case.
But your argument really is that they need to provide evidence to you that producing your documents was required from you.
Yeah, well,
that's what
I said to them on the side of the road. I said, basically, I put on the bottom of the slip that at the time of the complaint, I wasn't performing a function of government and I wasn't acting as an agent of the Crown. All claims rebutted, and I signed it. That's how I signed it. So it got a bit of an unusual response in as the first time they wrote to me, they didn't write to me as the all capital like they usually do, identifying you as, a member of the state or, a corporate agent or whatever you want to call it.
I'm not sure I buy into any. any of that, but that's Freeman stuff, and that's not really my thing at all.
No.
I could go on for
I'm
ages
just
about
giving
that.
you a bit of a background. But what actually happened? They were trying to come at me for no insurance, failing to produce insurance, failing to produce MOT, failing to produce driving license. What they actually did me for in the end, after all of this fuss, was they sent me an £80 fine for failing to produce my driving license. And I was thinking, the only reason they could do that is because they own the driving license. And if you are required to produce something that they own and you don't do it, then I suppose they have the right to.
Well, you're making presumptions. Why don't you go back into appeal and make them prove their case?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm going to do.
There's no good arguing it in magistrates. In magistrates' courts, everyone might as well just lay down and take it. Because you can't set a precedent. It doesn't go on the record in magistrates' court. So take it to appeal, put your legal argument there, and it does go on the record. So it helps. But, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to give the appeal process a go with this one, just to sort of keep everybody up to date.
Disclosure order, make them disclose their authority over you.
So that I can,
And if they don't, you want it struck out on the grounds of lack of due process. Oh God, every phone in the house is going. I'm sorry. I put the others under pillows, but someone's found another one.
Lee wanted to ask a question as well. Lee, if you want to jump in there.
Yeah, not so much a question, just about what Kerry Ann was saying before about the person, all that sort of thing about being born and then until your parents. You've got to grasp the. There's not
really any proof that ties you into the system. It seems to be
what I wanted to say was the legal person. What is the legal person? What your pawn on the Board of Commerce is
Body
property
corporate.
of the state. I have two legal persons. I've got a legal person for Spain, which is easily identifiable because it just gives you a number. You get that everywhere you go. What's your number? What's your residence number? What's your thing number? It's easily identifiable because it's not really the name, it's more the number they're interested in. So when people say about the person, the parents, that's their legal person to act in commerce. That's all it is. It belongs to the government. They tell you that on your birth certificate. It's there to act in their sea of commerce, in their system. That's exactly what it is.
I've heard that argument and I understand that argument, but I have seen no evidence to substantiate that argument in any way, shape or form. I'd like to. If you've got any to prove, send it.
I'm not saying evidence. I've got no evidence for it either, Sarah. But if you look,
exactly.
I tell you what. No, but I'm digging and I'm seeing the clues, and that's what I'm saying. The clues are there, and where I'm looking a lot is on illegal immigrants, because obviously for a long time in Spain I was an illegal immigrant and I dodged the system here, and I worked the system in that way, the way that a lot of people are complaining that the illegals are doing it in England at the moment. And you see how it all works into that system.
There are Supreme Court
you get clues in
on
there, big clues.
By the way,
I think you're correct. I did a Freedom of Information request a long time back to my local council saying if a parent has not registered their child's birth, does the social services department of the council have any authority to take that child away from the parent without the parent's consent? And I got a one-word answer back: no.
Quite right.
Yeah, so yes, I think you're correct. You need evidence.
Sarah?
I think the easiest way to do this, and this is actually what I'm doing now, this is when I got out of court with Mike last Friday, I said, right, okay, I'm ready now. I've done enough legal arguments. I've won 10 High Court of Appeals now, out of 10. I've got the arrogance. I've got the confidence. I've sort of honed my craft to writing a legal argument and getting very succinct, and I know what evidence means. I'm going to go for the big one now, and I want someone who's got an appeal or got a case that's going to go to appeal on any statute. I've actually found someone, and we're going to change his appeal, and we are going to challenge the state now in accordance to with my book. We're going to go in and we're going to say, okay, forget the grounds. Doesn't matter what the case was about. First of all, now we want the state to prove that this legislation applies. In other words, because all legislation is about controlling the person, we are going to require the state to prove that this guy who we're taking this case for now is the person who is mentioned in the legislation. It's exactly what you're saying. We're going to go in now and we're going to challenge on appeal on the grounds that we haven't had due process of law because no evidence was provided that this statute applies to this person, and we're going to make them disclose. And obviously they can't disclose, so in doing that, that will prove the case that they will then have to find in favour of our appeal because there was a lack of due process. They haven't.
I think I've asked for that in court. I've asked them to cite the law that says that this is applicable to me. Can you cite the law that says that this act or statute is applicable to me? And also we've got Paul just wants to jump in and ask a question quickly there, Sarah, if that's okay.
Well, it's more of have I got it right than a question. The first thing is I don't think your information is any longer up for debate, Sarah. 10 out of 10. That's not a debate.
Yeah,
okay, I'm working that on hardcore evidence, so I'd go with that. One thing I've got is, where is this common law? Can somebody present it to me? I can't find it. It doesn't exist. Where is it?
It's
common law.
It's precedent.
Well, that's precedent. That's in law, isn't it? Is the law common to everyone, Sarah?
That's a very good question. When
because
you hear,
otherwise, it's NLP, it's neuro-linguistic programming.
Are you aware of my friend Ben Fellows?
No.
And his case. Ben Fellows was, he's doing a walk at the moment, walking from Plymouth to Ken Clark's house in London to hand deliver a letter accusing him of sexual assault on him when he was a child. Was a child actor. He was in EastEnders and all sorts of things. I'm sorry, I've forgotten the question. What was the question? What were we leading up to?
It's common law.
It's law for everybody, yeah. And he presented his evidence, which includes filmed evidence, to the Metropolitan Police because he lives in London. The Metropolitan Police told him uncategorically, a number of them did. I don't know if he's got it in writing. I'm camping with him at the weekend, so we'll find out.
There's also a video of an interview with the police as well, isn't there?
Yeah, that they told him that Ken Clark is, and I direct quote, above the law. The Metropolitan Police told him that. They also said that all MPs are, and that their assistants and their aides are as well. And this is not just while they're in office, but it's for life. So I sent a Freedom of Information request to the Ministry of Justice last week, and I had a reply today, strangely enough, and I expect you can work out the answer before I tell you. And I said, can you please give me your recorded evidence? Because I said, Ben has said here's a video of him saying it. Can you please give me your recorded information that says precisely who is and who isn't governed by the law in this land? And the answer came back, we don't hold this information. So it's just pure corruption.
So my analogy, you see, and I know I think a bit weird for most people. I don't dispute that my brain's kind of not wired up the same as most.
Welcome to the club.
The law is not common. That is my question.
Legislation isn't.
Is it common to everyone? Is that what? Well, that's not what. Well, that's legislation. You see.
Exactly.
I'm asking a dead straight question. Is the law common? Mm. You see, I can't find this common law. Right? It doesn't seem to exist. I know law exists. And in law it is written to love thy neighbour. That can be used. I know that. I've used it. And I'm not quite sure where to go with this myself, because as far as I'm concerned, we're asking for something when we're going forward and saying the law's common. No, it isn't. We need the law should be common. I think it should be common, and it needs to be common to everyone. Otherwise, it's just word games. It's just NLP word games. And my experience in court, and I don't even get into court. I use neuro-linguistic programming on the officers and the people who are involved with the case. And then you don't end up in court, because that's exactly what they're doing in a court. We can call it law, we can call it the defence and the prosecution, but you're being put under verbal assault. That's what's happening. You take a position of defence, there's an argument against you, and you're pushed into a point of demand where you have no free choice. As far as I'm concerned, that is not loving thy neighbour. and that is causing harm and distress, and therefore it's not even law. They aren't courts. They aren't courts. They're churches, and their authority, why they're above the law, because they have an authority above the church. To me, it's that simple. I mean, a lot of people will argue with this, please go into the court. Please go into the court and find out. There will be a winner and a loser. There's very few. Even when you win a case, there's still a cost, and there's still a cost.
Make them prove it.
No, I'd burn
Make
them down.
prove their
Personally,
claim.
I wouldn't try to make them prove anything. I'd just burn the places down. I really would. I'd burn every single one of them down. I mean, I wouldn't hurt any of the people, don't get me wrong, and I don't mean physically go and set fire to a court. But as far as they're concerned, they should be just removed from our consciousnesses forever. We don't require them. They're not needed. They're unfair. They're unjust. I mean, and you will not find justice in a court. It is a court of law, not a court of justice.
I agree completely.
I'm done. Thank you.
Can I just come in with a common law thing? I think where the roots of what we call common law, obviously you've got all the way dating back to when they collected all the laws from all over the land of what they were doing, the customs and things. And custom is a part of law as well. But the common law is more along the lines of the trial by jury. And your jury is supposed to be of your setting. And it's your common people. And they make the decision. Peers. And that's where common law comes from, because it's the people of your common to you make the decision whether you're guilty or not after hearing the evidence.
Yep.
And that's obviously creates case precedents.
Yeah, and juries can nullify the legislation too, should they choose to.
Yeah, exactly, making it that common law.
Mm. So it's not really the rights or the laws, it's the application of it, it's the use of it.
It comes from you are all equal under the eyes of God, or under God, you are all equal. That's where it comes from. I mean, it might come from other places. That's where it came. That's how I recognised it, I should say. Who's this God person who can tell us we're all equal?
Do we need?
Do I need someone?
What if we don't believe in God?
What is it? It's a balance. We're trying to balance between what? Wealth, worth, and measure. There it is. And you pick any of them to try and balance with, you'll lose every single time. Even if it's only in the time and energy we actually put into something we seem to all agree is no longer required. Why would we carry on? To defend who and what? I get lost at that.
So that's my whole point of my next big legal argument, is really to cut it out right at source. We don't need to talk about the cannabis laws. We don't need to talk about the driving laws. We don't need to talk about all sorts of these different laws. I'm saying laws in inverted commas when I'm meaning legislation here. We don't need to. If they cannot prove that legislation applies to you, it doesn't matter what they come at you and tell you you've broken this rule. They have to prove that rule applies to you. And that's where I'm going next. That's my biggie. That's the next thing.
Well, if you do get a chance, I'd like to see how you would go regarding the cannabis laws. Sarah, perhaps on another time, perhaps with Rick, or at least on the Rick Simpson show. There's been a hell of a lot of people asking about this recently. And like I say, my personal technique is don't go to court. You don't need to. If you can get it right before, you haven't got the evidence to actually use against you. And
if you read, if you read the civil procedures rules or the criminal procedures rules, the CPR rules, Google it, that is the primary objective of the rules, is that you deal with everything outside of court. Because, of course, if you can deal with it outside of court, there's no need to go to court in the first place. You only go to court when there's a conflict. So maybe they've come at you with 15 things and you write the legal argument and you deal with it appropriately in the paper before you go to court. You might find that, yes, actually, we're in agreement, of 8 of those. So the only things we're still in conflict are those are the only things that we have to go to court with, because we cannot agree out of court. And of course, if you don't do that, you can have your side of the case struck out because you haven't followed the procedural rules. And of course, that applies to them too, which is quite a powerful tool to use against them. But also, if you lose, whoever loses will get stung with the cost of the other side, because they lose. They hadn't got a case, so that shouldn't have been in court in the first place. They should have dropped it. So the only reason they're in court accruing these costs is because of their own failure deal with it out of court. Making
Right,
sense?
yeah, I think I get that. I think I get
Agree.
that. Have you got
Anniversary.
It's called the overriding principle.
Sarah, would you have a book or anything like that people like me?
No, Google CPR rules, civil procedures rules. It's free online. CPR.
Yeah, well,
CPR pre-action protocols. That's what you need to type in, and it's all there. It's very easy, very simple. And the thing that the top line is called the overriding principle, and the overriding principle is it must be dealt with out of court, if possible.
Okay, I'll deal with this direct then, instead of kind of go round the house about it. Have you got a book, Sarah, that people might be able to get their hands on?
Dragging it out of me. Yes. It's on my website again, thelioness.co.uk. You can get it through Amazon in any country. I think Amazon prints it now. It's out of my hands. I don't deal with it. It's called So They Say You've Broken the Law, Challenging Legal Authority. But if you go to thelioness.co.uk, there's a little tab called Shop, and you can get it through there. And it's a little tiny booklet, and it's just about making the state prove it has authority over you. Because the simple question is, who owns me? Who owns me? Now, you can ask barristers and lawyers, and shown my book to countless barristers, lawyers, and judges now, and I said, have you found a legal argument against what I say in there? No one ever has. So I'm confident still.
Sarah, can I just add as well? Sorry to butt in. I have done the sort of legal argument thing as well, whereby I did some tests with some speed camera stuff, and when I got the paperwork through, etc., the first thing I did, the first line of the first paragraph, I said I was in the car at that time. At the time of the complaint, it was me. However, have you got any facts or evidence to prove that this law that the Road Traffic Act is applicable to me?
Exactly.
And I followed that up as far where I even wrote a letter to the Crown Prosecution Service. They always wrote back a blanket letter just stating that it applies to everybody. They haven't got to prove it. And there was 2 cases where I didn't even bother going to the court cases because I'd done all of this stuff.
Well, that's back to the thing that they're not obliged to do it if you request it. They're not obliged to provide,
okay.
But they are obliged to do it if you do a disclosure order.
Because they're still ongoing. I mean, they obviously fined me for failing to provide details, although the first line in the first bloody paragraph, I told them it was me driving, and they've still found me guilty of failing to provide details. So I guess that could be a bit of a fun one to go back over. What do you reckon?
I think Sarah just got beamed in there. Are you still with us, Sarah? That was it. That was it. She's just been terminated, hasn't she?
Yeah. Somebody's just... I think it's the lizards.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I think... are you there, Sarah?
You're back?
I'm here.
Wiggle your microphone about. It's your headset, isn't it? If anybody does want to donate to Sarah, apparently she can't afford her headset. She had to stick it together with sellotape. So I think it's just failed on you, Sarah.
Are you there?
No, we need to please, Sarah. If you do, just butt in if your audio comes back.
We can't hear. We can't hear you, Sarah. We got you back then. Wiggle it a bit more.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
perfect.
Oh.
Yeah.
No, gone again.
Gone.
Right, it's not your connection. Your connection's fine. I can see that. That's fine, but it's your.
It sounds like the wires or something on the headset.
It sounds like the wires gone on the headset. Yes. Unplug it, plug it back in, shake it about a bit. We want you back, Sarah. Yeah. Anyway, it's a shame, really. Hopefully, Sarah can get sorted out, and we'll hear a bit more from her, Dave. That was brilliant.
And for everybody listening, we think Sarah has been abducted by the lizards. So sorry about that.
I don't.
Sarah's got some trouble with her mic, with her headset. But Sarah, I know you wanted to be gone by around 9:10, so maybe this is a natural way to sort of say thanks ever so much for coming on to the Dark City Radio personal navigation. Hopefully, we'd like to have you back again. I'll make these disclosure orders and for what I've been doing, and we shall all be guided to your website and go and get the book, etc., etc. And you've definitely taught us something, and we've gained from you being on here tonight. So thank you ever so much, and hope the open mic night goes well. Thank you very much, Sarah. So I don't know. Yeah, that's brilliant. How can you follow that? I suppose.
She's fixed it. Go on, Sarah. Oh, she definitely came back then. You did, definitely. Clunk, clunk. I heard you, Dave, coming over, Sarah. Clear as a...
I know.
But never mind. Oh no, she's unplugged it. There you go. Brilliant. Can I also say there, Dave, that was brilliant, most informative. I'm going to have to go and listen to all that again.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. It's interesting to see it coming from from within the system, if you like, using the system against itself, sort of thing.
Sarah, you're back. We can hear you coughing.
You can hear me?
You can now.
You're back again now.
Welcome back.
Plugged in. I'm just talking. Okay, well, you can hear me. I'm just talking to the laptop now then. Hello.
Hello.
I've got no headset.
Right, the lizards have returned Sarah now. So Sarah, yeah, just quickly then before we let you go or whatever.
I've got to check. Have you been implanted, Sarah?
Would I tell you if I had?
Would you recommend then doing a disclosure order, and appealing this decision? Because I guess they've made a decision that I failed to provide details, which is totally, it's crap, because the first line of the first paragraph, I told them I was in the car at the time of the complaint.
Yeah. So make them prove that legislation applies to you. Make them prove. And the beauty of the disclosure order, I think I was saying this when you couldn't hear me, is that there is a form that the court sends with that disclosure order, and it requires them to show just where they've looked to find that evidence. Have you gone through electronic files? Have you gone through filing systems? Have you gone through telephone systems? Have you gone through emails? So they have to actually show everywhere they have looked to provide that evidence that the court has ordered them to disclose.
Right.
So if it comes up that there is no evidence, then what the hell is the case about? So you can then go in and have it struck out quite easily due to, lack of due process, for example. There is no case to answer. If they can't prove that you're the defendant, there is no case.
Yeah. So in effect there, where a lot of, because a lot of people came to the conclusions, including me, that it was absolutely pointless even writing in, because they would just ignore the letter, or classed as a dead letter, or whatever you want to call it. But the fact of the matter is because you didn't do a proper disclosure order as opposed to a request.
Yeah. They're not obliged to comply with a request.
Yeah. Which, I suppose we should know that, really, because we say, are we obliged, is that a request or an order when a policeman says something to us, I suppose? So,
yeah, that's both ways. You have to look at both sides of it. That's why I look at it, and again, my tutor used the term, and I use it a lot now, look at it forensically. Take yourself out of the system and really look at, what are we dealing with here? What have we got? If it applies to one side, it applies to the other. And if it doesn't apply to one side, then it doesn't apply to the other. Brilliant. We have to play fair. Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely superb. Yeah, it's been a real eye opener. That the council tax, that is absolutely inspired. And as soon as you started speaking, it was just hilarious. So, yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. I don't know if Paul wants to just say anything before you go, because I know we're on 9:15, and I know you want to go to your you've got something.
I've got to play music. Yes,
you've got to play music. So, yeah, thanks ever so much again. Anyway, Sarah, I don't know if you want to add anything, Paul.
Well, of course, it's your radio, Sarah. Please use it if you for whatever reason you want. That's what Dark City Radio is. It's been a pleasure having you. I don't know if you heard. I think you could hear, but I'm going to listen to it all again. It's not often because I'm here listening to it, but there was that much information. It is good stuff.
I'm glad it was useful.
Yeah, it is, definitely. I mean, like I say, I'm really aware of how words are used within these churches that go under the disguise of courts, and how we heal ourselves to this thing called authority, rather than even if you are going to put yourself into a position of any authority, then make yourself the position. I mean, once you do that, my advice would be to relinquish yourself immediately of any needs of authority. You know, if I am going to be placed into a position of demand, because it's not a choice, and that's why I go with the earlier, are we slaves? Well, I was born into a slave family, onto an enslaved island, onto an enslaved planet. So, I mean, to be running round and saying, I'm different, to me is preposterous. And then repeatedly doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome.
I have never thought about that like that.
The definition of insanity.
Oh, no, surely I am not sane. I could not be sane. No.
No, I mean,
No. That would make the world insane, wouldn't it?
Yeah. But no, make them prove their case. It's their case, make them prove it. That's what the court, that's what the legal system is for.
That is, and I was saying before we come on, the Mark Stevens, it's practically identical to that approach. Ask questions, ask for facts or evidence, you know.
Asking doesn't always make them do it.
Yeah,
Or,
sorry, yeah. I suppose he does that during cases, but the disclosure order is absolutely superb. So brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Sarah. We'll hopefully, if you'd like to come on again, you'd be more than welcome, and we can't thank you enough. It's been absolutely superb speaking to you and brilliant information. So you have a great night, and thanks again.
Right, take care.
Take care. Cheers. Bye.
Growl. Go and growl. She's supposed to growl, is she not? Growl.
You make me, I'll do it.
Yeah, growl.
Brilliant. The fantastic Sarah Lioness.
I know.
Right, so should we go to a break, Paul, and then come back after the break? Hello, hello. Hello, hello. Hello, hello.
Today, just sit back and take a rest. Sometimes it gets too hard. Just sit back and take a breath. Do not get too stressed out. Not gonna get you take your time. And if you had a hard day today, just get up and float away. Or just slide off this bone, so we can all just get along. Do not get too stressed out. not gonna get you anywhere. So take your time. Take your time to rewind. When you feel better, when you know what you gotta do. Take your time to rewind. Then you find there's more to life than you can tell your mind. You take a rest. You know there is more to this than take your time. Take your time to rewind. Then you feel better. When you know what you gotta do. Take your time.
Hi everybody. Yep. This is the last part of Personal Navigation with Dave Matthews. You can still Skype in if you want to add anything to, the conversation. You can go on to the Mumble, I believe. You can Skype in on Bob's Backyard or phone in. You're more than welcome to phone in. And wow, what a guest we had tonight, Sarah the Lioness, and she even did a growl for us at the end. So brilliant. And we're always learning stuff, and the disclosure order is certainly something that I'm going to be, looking into, and it's just a superb, tool to have, I guess. And I guess we've all made mistakes in that respect. And thanks to Sarah for sort of, letting us know what the procedure should be if you want to sort of use their own, their system against them. We've talked about facts and evidence and such like before, and presumptions of laws. And I think that, what she said tonight is just, it's absolutely brilliant. It's just, and so simple as well. You hear the likes of Dean Clifford and Winston Straight saying that law, should be easy enough for the simple man to understand or simple woman to understand. And it should be, we must keep it simple. And when you hear, that argument tonight, for example, with the council tax, how simple is that? It's a classic example of using their own bullshit, their own rules, if you like, against them. You're in one breath, you're telling me, well, the law says that's the minimum amount of money I need per week to let me live. And then in the same breath, the same authority are attempting to steal money from you. Then, Section 14, I believe it was, of the human rights. It's just superb. So I don't really know how I can follow that, because my mind is so full of information. I don't know if we've got any updates. I was talking about a guy in the Rhondda Valley earlier on, who's unemployed and stuff. And the first thing that I sort of jumped on with him was the evidence part of it. I said you can request the evidence, you can request the phone call that was allegedly made, because obviously he was causing a bit of a stir outside, and all he was doing, he was frustrated. This guy, he'd just been at the hands of some person in the job centre, just suddenly had the carpet ripped from underneath of him because they didn't consider that he'd applied for enough jobs. So this guy was just frustrated. He was, standing out in the street. It was the only thing he felt he could do, was standing out in the street with a megaphone. And it's a very, very sad state of affairs to be, reduced to that sort of level, really. But I guess, what else could he do? All he can start doing is writing letters. That doesn't help him put food on the table. And it's again an example of why, we need to fix this broken system. And I think Paul made the comment earlier on that, we don't need these courts. They're not there for our benefit. They're not there for our protection, etc., etc. They're really not. So hopefully, if we can start using all of the tools and all of the methods of the people that are coming on, onto personal navigation and start challenging the system, it'll start to fall apart around us, and then we can create a new system, a better system, and a fairer system. So I don't know if Paul, you'd like to add anything on what you've learned tonight, or Lee? Because I've got a bit of brain freeze at the moment.
Lee, do you want him? I think he's gone now. The ladies aren't.
Yeah, the lizards have had him.
Yeah, one question I actually ask people who have met David Icke is if they actually look longingly into his eyes.
I suspect not.
I am only joking, of course. I'm only joking. David does what he does. And, I suppose like most people, he's just trying to cut himself a slice of the pie, or whatever it is he's trying to cut away at. And to me, that's a lot of it. It's balancing the scales in court between the right and the wrong, the good and the evil, the perpetrator and the victim. And it's like, whoa, hang on a minute. They're all victims to me. There is no kind of true balancing of that scale. It isn't, and it's a battle you can't win. There's a guy, Cillian Gibran. I'm terrible with names, as people know out there. Excuse me. Well, he's not alive anymore, so he can't kind of sue me for getting his name wrong. But he wrote a passage about, I think it was joy and sorrow and joy, and that some people say that they're separate. That your sorrow is separate from your joy and stuff. And I can't remember the exact passage. But it's something like, that your laughter, the laughter that springs up from a well is often the same well that contains your tears. When you're at your, the lute, which soothes your soul, was once wood that was carved with knives. The glass that you drink from, was fired and burnt in the potter's kiln. And he mentions a few things like this, Like I say, he does it much better justice than I. But it's getting to the balance of things. What it is you're trying to balance, between joy and sadness, when this is what you're using. Because often when the things that make you sad are often the things that made you most joyous. And vice versa. So when you're trying to balance this, and he describes it as when the merchant holds you in his scale and tries to balance you between your joy and sadness, only the merchant knows you are at your best when you are empty. So for me, to not to play the game, you see, of joy or sadness, or of good or evil, or of light over dark, or over law or over justice, and so forth, To me, they're not a position that if I knew what I was doing, I would truly take. I would not put myself in that position if I knew about it beforehand. Now I do know about that position. I endeavour to do something about it. Previously, I did not know I was in a position of demand, and I was defending that position with my life. I was prepared to surrender myself for what I believed to be right. And I was wrong. You're always wrong. If you're fighting for it, you've made a mistake. That's how I go off it now. If you're in demand, you know, you can't make a choice. We're not free. How could we be free if you're under demand? You're not free. You're under demand, whether it's a gas bill, electric bill, you know, the government, whether you want, because you can't grow medicine. You know, you're under demand. You're not being given a choice. That's how I get it. You know, of course we're enslaved. Why would you think anything else? We're not free. This planet's never known what free is. We've always been enslaved, right from the onset. It doesn't have to be like that, of course, you know. It's just that's what we know. That's what we've been taught, or at least all I've learned. Because of a few people I've met just recently, I mean, they're talking about things that happened a real long time ago. I don't know if them things have really happened. You know, I don't know. Or maybe that's our true future. That we can be rid of these things. But for me, there's no point standing in defence of a position and then trying to tell me you're not a slave. What are you defending? Your land, your home, your family, your wealth, your worth, your measure against who or whom? A perpetrator or a victim? Don't know. Not my bag. Not my bag. My navigational skills, Dave, to coin the name of your show, my navigational skills are to navigate way past them. Way past them. And my consciousness goes, bing! Don't go in that direction. Sail away. Dangerous waters ahead. Bing! And it seems to be, once you're caught up in that field, the opposite happens. It goes, bing! And you pull over to it and head directly for it. Even though you know that there lies conflict, there lies war, there lies suffering, there lies books, law, God. Not my bag. It's not.
Do you know, I would. Those are absolutely superb words, and I would agree with them wholeheartedly. I think I've sort of been drawn into this type of stuff because of the sort of injustice that I see happening around me, and I've been drawn to try and, you know, fight and actually get involved and try things out and fight, and, you know, just so that people can attempt to free themselves. But like you say, when you look at the bigger picture, I don't care. They can put, you know, I think I've got fines, you know, going back from some of the stuff I've tested out where they've put fines on me, you know, like 16 or 1800 or $2,000 or somewhere in there. But I don't care. I don't even think about it. It's not on my day to day. It's not even in my thought process. I don't care what they claim I owe them, because it doesn't matter to me. But my mission really is to try to find ways that people will no longer live in fear, and people like, you know, this poor guy who could see no other way out than to stand in the middle of a street with a megaphone. I mean, that's what we need. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing on a personal level. I don't care what they write on a bit of paper, and I don't care what they, you know, what's it matter? You owe us this amount of money. Oh, do I really? Well, very good. See you again. You know, what's it matter to me? And I think that when you look at the bigger picture, like you were saying, Paul, we are slaves. It's going to be very, very difficult to find a way out of not being a slave, because we, as a race, have created a system around us. We're all guilty of creating the system that's around us and sort of consumes us in a way. We're consumed by greed in the masses. I think we've been consumed by greed, by thinking that this house or this car or this flashy looking lady is going to make us happy, or this lottery win this week will make us happy. If I won the lottery this week, all my troubles would be over. But really think about it. Would they really be over? Really? Would you not be a slave if you won the lottery? What do you think about that, Paul?
I'd be a god if I won the lottery. I didn't buy a ticket.
No, but you know, like, people, your troubles wouldn't be over. Like you say, you'd still be in demand. But you'd just be in a different kind of demand.
My troubles are over, bro.
Because you don't care. Well, you do care.
No, I've really, when you kept saying that, you know, that you didn't care about it, you're probably one of the most caring men I've met. You really do care. That's why you do drive 5 hours to turn up, and you do care.
Yeah,
you know, I know you love to do it as well, Dave.
Yeah, I care about people.
Yeah, of course you do.
And that's my driving force, you know?
Yeah. The thing is, bro, to me, you know the gorillas, the genetically silly weak ones amongst us, you know, the police officers that come up to us and, you know, the puppets of the puppets.
Fire monkeys.
Well, yeah, you know, and I don't mean to give them any disrespect. I'm trying to give them a pet name, really. You know, that's what I'm doing. I'm not trying to belittle them and put them down. Because when you think that the little and down, they will become little and down, because it's true. That's what happens. You know, they've dumbed themselves down for that long. The authority says jump and they jump. Who is their authority? Who is their authority?
It's the pyramid of power again, isn't it?
Yeah, well, there is no man. There is nobody behind the curtain. This is the oopy bit of it. There is no authority. I mean, so people will go, oh yeah, but there's a secret organisation that nobody knows about. Mm. Right, okay, well, I'll tell you what, it can't be that secret if it's an organisation, because that means there's more than one. Yeah. Somebody knows about it. There must be 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of them. You know, and Lee said many times, these are just guys doing deals with one another. That's what they're doing. Just doing deals in the club. They really are. The sickening part of it all, it's us they're trading with. Well, unless you trade yourself. You can trade yourself. I mean, why not? I used to think that it was about putting my head down and getting on with it all. I've learned over the last couple of years, maybe last 3-4 years, on the roller coaster I've been on, which I'm now beginning to really buzz up on. I really am. You know, it's about being loud. It's about being noticed. It's about being seen. It's about, you know, whatever anybody tells you. This you might just get one goal. This could be it. I doubt it. Do you know? I doubt it. I actually truly think that we're in an illusion created by our own delusion. Or was it an illusion created? Anyway, something like that. You know, it's kind of one of them. But, you know, if it is, and I think you should never be too focused in your opinions to think you're right all the time. Because if you are, then change is going to happen, and eventually you'll be wrong, because things are going to change. So, yeah, I think it is about living your life just in the moment as best you can. Let people know around you that you love them and you care for them. And, you know, you're cutting the ties. You know, not because you don't care for them, because you do care for them. You know, these people we go up against in court, Dave,
yeah,
they're the weakest out of us all. They've given over all their authority to some mythical, magical, mumbo-jumbo bullshit created by a sky fairy. What?
Yeah, they're basically obeying words on a screen.
Of God.
Yeah.
God's telling them what to do. You know, yeah. You hear them. You get in the House of Lords and you the gods. You know, what? Oh, well, change your religion. You can go on. Go and change your religion and persecute somebody else in another name. That's not religion.
And they're more scared of change as well.
I've met real Jewish people, real Muslims, real Hindus, real Christians, real ones. Not like these bunch of tarts that run round the UK going, oh, we're Christians. They're not. Christians don't lend. They don't borrow. They give. They give. That's what they do. They give. If they got it, you need it, they give it you. That's what a Christian does. That's Christian law. There is no banks. You can't lend anything. Why? Why can't you lend anything? Because you can't borrow it. Oh, what's against the law? Stop doing it. Yeah, but God, change your religion. Go and change your religion. You know, I mean, change your religion. Don't. You know, and you find it with everyone. They just defend the position. They defend the position. That's how it is. You know, well, my granddad and my dad and my dad and his dad and their dad. Oh, shut up. They were all wrong.
It's like a super complicated game of I'm right and you're wrong.
Exactly, a demand. A super complicated of 2 points all the time. You're being put into demand and pulled from one position towards another. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to get you to move from the position you're in to another. They're trying to pull your focus off your presence in this moment. That's what they're trying to do. That is the game, definitely. You know, if you can stay focused on yourself and not be pulled onto anyone else, walk into one of them courts, don't even think. Just walk in, sit down, do a Danny Shine, and walk out again. You know, I've had more success, right, when people are completely unaware of who I am or what I'm doing or why I'm there, when I have no interaction or involvement with anyone. That's the best success I've had in court, crazy chaos.
Yeah.
Straight as chaos in the place. And I don't mean that in a bad way. You see, these people think they're living in order. This is order. It's not order. Look around them. You know, look outside that building. Their order is baked in blood.
Yeah.
That's their order. Oh, yeah, well, when it comes to demonic, you have to go in there freely, under invitation. They have to invite us. And that's how I see it. If they want to invite me into their home, oh, yeah. Well, I ain't playing by any rules. I'm not playing by any rules. None at all. And I reckon this is an illusion created by a delusion, and most of them don't know it. And the only reason they have breath in their bodies, because my real presence here, not the one who's talking to you now, but my real presence here has got compassion for them as well. And that's the only reason they can still pull breath into their bodies. Because, yeah, I'm more compassionate than I even know I am. And I must have had that compassion for myself because I've been more lost than any of them, Dave. Yeah. I really have. And I can't accuse or judge someone else for being more lost than I was. Or even less lost. What difference does it make? They're in demand, same as I was. I've been pulled onto their demonic realm, focused into it, and become demonic. That's what happens. Wherever you focus your energy, that's where energy goes, where we're focusing it. And we have focused our energies on destructing, learning through torment, learning through pain and destruction. Well, if that's what they want, I'm not here to judge them. That's not my job. I ain't here. The only one I'm capable of judging is me. And I stopped judging myself a long time ago. It no longer served me. I mess up. I learn quicker now. I don't beat myself up so much. Creeps back and I do it. But like I say, for me, the interaction I've had here amongst you lot has brought all this back to me. I lived amongst them for years. I didn't know.
Yeah. Well, it is, but when you start sort of talking, you know, when we're talking like this and it's all very sort of relaxed, when you really stand back and have a look at it, if you sort of equated it to a playground or something similar to that, it is just a game of I'm right and you're wrong.
Demand. Yeah.
You're sort of, well, can you prove that you're right? Well, I haven't got to. I just am. And that's as sort of childish as the court system is. And do we, I would, if I could persuade, and I'm not saying that everybody should, I don't know, you know.
There is no right.
Make that decision. I don't, if I could persuade everybody in the world who is governed by the crown or, you know, one of these similar sort of systems to walk away and remember who, you know, go back to who you are inside, go back to what you feel is right and just. And
that's the focus you hold when you walk in there, mate. Don't focus that and try. Look, I'm right with you, Dave. right with you on this, bro, you know. But, you know, when you walk into that place, right, what you're doing is you're going in and you're thinking, right, I'm going to focus on this guy here. Or what. I just, look, that guy you're looking at there, right, his focus of attention, right, is Miss Perkins at 3:20, you know, costs him £60 and he can still feel the welts on his ass, right? You're immediately presuming that guy in front of you has got the same outlook on this as yourself. No.
Yeah.
But you can do that. You can go in there and put yourself into that position and hold that focus, man. I mean, give it a go, Dave, but don't let them know you're doing it. Do your experiments. I have. And honestly, I see more results. I see more people coming out of them courts with a smile on their face, Dave, than otherwise.
Yeah.
I mean, all right, like me and you, we always come out laughing because it's just funny, isn't it? It's just like, what are you doing? Oh, look at this guy here. Look. Oh, what's this? I'll pull his strings from here, Dave. Watch this. Ah! Clink! His head moved, his arms started moving around. You know, I thought, hey, if we grabbed here now, we'll get him dancing. And we got him up dancing. If we would have stayed focused, you know, if you had a few people in the room doing it, we could get him dancing. You know, you've just got to have them in different areas, and they just go, ah! And their heads go, boom! And then get somebody else to do it. And you have a beatbox going, you can actually get the judicial beatbox going in a court. If you get yourself organised, do it well enough, it'd be like a flash dance. It'd be great. All their heads moving to the left and the right. It wouldn't happen. We've just been joined by our Sparky, Chris Sparky. It'd take you minutes to be able to put that to a decent beat. I'm telling you. You know, but why not? That's the kind of fun we should have. But remember, do this with laughter, do it with fun, and do it compassion. Because you're manipulating your brothers and sisters. I'm aware that happens. That's why I kind of do my best just to stay focused on myself and stay grounded. It's so easy to move out of the field of being manipulated into manipulating others and then justify our actions. Again, all we've done is we've moved in position from being the victim to being the perpetrator. Now, if we can learn through that, if we can learn through that lesson, we can delete the victim. There is no victim. You get rid of the victims, there ain't any. And people are going, oh, there'll be perpetrators. Ding, you talk to a perpetrator. Every single one of them on a level is more screwed than any of us here. That's how they get to do nasty, dirty, disgusting shit to people. They don't know what love is. They never focused on themselves. These people have been brutalised and manipulated beyond our imagination. So, you know, it is compassion, Dave. I learnt that from Rick. You know, when we were doing all this with Spain, man, I mean, and he don't give a flying monkeys what happens to him. He don't. He just don't want anybody else to get hurt.
Yeah, you can hear it in Rick as
well.
Well,
I said the same thing to Rick, and I'll say it to everyone who's bothered to listen. They're getting hurt all around us. Anyway, they're getting hurt. Well, you know, we can do is do what we can to make sure it's not us as an individual that's taking a victim or presenting ourselves as one. I reckon it begins with each one of us, bro. Yeah. I reckon it does. I don't think there's going to be any big triggered event that goes round the world and we all rise up, you know. I mean, there'll be little ones.
I fear that. That's the thing I fear the most is people in their masses. You know, the civil unrest aspect of it. That
do you?
Is
I don't. They should do like, where was it? I don't know if it was Iceland, when they sent the women with the pots and pans and the potatoes, and they went and threw potatoes and they threw potatoes. It was brilliant. And
but on another note as well, with the, you know, you're saying about them making them dance and beatboxing and stuff like that in court. This guy who had the megaphone, I'm dying to see what happens with him, because he is is it a comedy hypnotist? You know, like the Paul McKenna type hypnotist? And he's studied the what's the thing you say?
Linguistic programming.
Yes.
Yeah, I've never actually trained in it. I was put under repeat.
Yeah, he's trained in it.
Over and over again, he put me under, until I knew it. That's how I learned it.
Yeah, well, he's done. Yeah, he's trained in it. So I said to him, just go in and use that. I said because you'll just own them straight away. It's hilarious. But yeah, the pots and pans and potatoes.
Put some conflict, man, because it'll flip round. He's under already.
Yeah.
You see, that's it. People don't get it. They're already under. You don't have to hypnotise somebody. You know, we got all these people going around, oh, everybody should wake up. My God, if they did, you wouldn't believe it. I'm not going to run down cleaning up the emotional mess.
No.
No, they can deal with that themselves. Focus on somebody else and try and dump their emotional problems on them. That will not work. Short-term solution. Short-term. What this capitalism we've gone through. It's a short-term solution. All it does is push the problem off onto the next generation. And well, hang on a minute. We don't want to mess people up. Thank you. I don't want other people to be responsible for what I've done here. I want it to the best of my ability. I want to be responsible for my actions and what I'm doing. And look, I ain't no saint. I ain't no saint. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if I was the supreme fucking bunter, runter, whatever they call them, who's in charge, I'd send all the big-titted blonde women to war, carrying shopping. Topless. I'm telling you, topless. It'd terrify terrorists, wouldn't it? Look, here come loving, beautiful women, topless, carrying shopping. I'm telling you, there's not an army in the men, there's not an army of them blokes, right? Right, we're going to be able to, because there's two things, right? They're either going to go, wow, look, whoa, look, beautiful, loving women, or they're going to go, shit, the wife's going to kill me, right? No, I mean, we can't keep using this same beat it with a stick. You can't. Of course, I'm being a little bit sexist there. I really am. I'm a little bit racist, of course. But my point being is, I suppose, this conflict ends, Dave, when the mothers stop sending their kids to war.
Yeah.
You're nearly done for time, bro.
Okay, well, on that, I think that we'll call a close to personal navigation. What a show it's been. So, yeah, brilliant. Thanks again for everybody's input, everybody in the chat box. A massive thanks to Sarah as well. She's certainly taught us a thing or two tonight, given us some sort of new remedies to go and use, and, just let's all get involved with that now. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and thanks for being in the chat room.
They said we could not do it. They said it wasn't possible. But we did it. We created a free radio station to bring the people together and spread an alternative message from the mainstream. They tried to silence us. They tried to hack us. But we carried on. You cannot silence the truth. You cannot enslave freedom. You cannot stop a good idea. You cannot stop Dark City Radio. The crew is now bigger and stronger than ever before. We will not be kept off the airwaves. We will continue. This is not our radio. This is your radio. This is Dark City Radio.
This is your Dark City. This is your Dark City.
This is your Dark City.
This is your Dark City. This is your Dark City.
This is your Dark City Radio.